He's here, everybody.
Hey!
Tommy P is here.
Tommy P.
Tom Pelissero making the very bold choice of having no socks on right now, and that is bold, sir.
It's
you
so
do
cold
know
in
it's
the
30
deep.
degrees outside. What the hell are you doing?
You know, I'm more concerned with tomorrow when I will be outside for TV.
But what do you? I mean, look at
He's
this.
from Minnesota.
I understand
this ain't
that.
nothing for Tom.
I think
By
that
the
anytime
way,
you can
look
show off a little bit of ankle, especially on your show, Rich,
Understood.
ratings gold.
Those are elite ankles. Those are.
I appreciate that.
Those are elite.
We call those athletic ankles.
Okay.
AAs.
What?
AAs.
I mean, you could do that next week when you're sitting in the show chair on Tuesday and
Well,
Wednesday.
now I
next
have
week.
to.
No,
I'm
you don't
pretty
have,
sure.
but no one will see.
You can wear shorts.
Yeah,
on
we'll
the
wear
show.
shorts on tomorrow.
It's even bolder to cross the leg to get the suit
I
pant
figured you
even
wanted to see the
higher
full-
up.
the full
Like, we're almost
inseam
getting
here.
Maximum calf.
This is
What is happening?
You might as well.
we're on Roku. There's no rules
You
here.
should have just wore culottes today. I mean,
What is happening? But seriously, that's a choice.
bold.
That's a choice. Nice suit. I think the whole thing works.
mean,
I'm just trying to give you material.
Come strong, don't come
Clearly
at all.
not. You have no material on. It's the lack of material that we're
Lacking
talking
material.
about right
looking
now.
sharp, Tom. Don't let him fool you.
Yeah, Tom.
Appreciate that.
not-
TJ's always on my side.
That's my man.
It's very Cliff Kingsbury COVID draft.
that is
Cliff Kingsbury. Remember that? Where you're sitting there with his loafers
Feet
and no
up.
socks on.
Kingsbury vibes.
The
Tom,
fire
right?
outside where it's 110 degrees in the backyard and you got the fire going.
Hey, Kingsbury's hair could never, though.
No
You
one in
lit,
the pool.
lit the fire pit.
could never touch
I'll
Tom's
take
hair.
my hair over Cliff's
That's
hair.
what I'm saying. His hair.
He's also got a strong suit game.
His hair could never touch yours.
Listen,
no way.
nobody's touching your hair. I mean, seriously, pomade versus pomade, nobody can
Well,
touch
Cece
it.
did a great job back there. I said just keep the height. That's how I judge my hair is by height.
Especially since she's definitely not used to doing
No,
any
no,
hair on the
no
Rich
hair,
Eisen Show. Back on the Rich Eisen Show Radio Network. Having a lot of fun sitting at the Rich Eisen Show desk, furnished by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call clickgrainger.com or just stop by. And look who has stopped by, our favorite, Tom Pelissero, back here on the program, NFL Network Insider, part of the NFL Network draft coverage again that begins 8 Eastern time when the Bears go on the clock Thursday night. Greatly appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.
So the general sense right now, like, what is it like for you? I mean, we had Schefter on in hour one, and he had, we were telling you off the air, he had one of those calls where it looked like, of course.
You don't think it was the stage call that he set up to look like he's really busy?
I really, you know what? I want that to really be the case.
He set his alarm to ring for 10 minutes.
Yes,
He's just
call me
playing
right in the
4D
middle
chess.
of
Yeah.
my
Yeah,
hit on the Rich Eisen Show.
9:12, Pacific.
I'm going to call Tom right now and have him
It's nonstop because everybody is trying to figure out what everybody else is doing. And
people folks use you for your information in a way.
they'll call and, sometimes they're asking questions where you can kind of tell that they are trying to get at something that they're trying to figure out. Other times it's, they talk about other things and maybe try to lead you down the wrong path. There's a lot of that. But I think that a big piece of it is they've done all their homework on this stuff. Like,
right.
The whole idea that, teams will put out stuff intentionally to, mess up the draft board, get guys to fall. It doesn't happen because every team's done their evaluations. Everybody's got their own board. All they're trying to do now is figure out where the hot spots are going to be at certain positions. If you're in the quarterback market, where are the quarterbacks going to go? If you're in the corner market, when do those guys start going? How many wide receivers go in round one? And you'll get completely different answers from team to team. And part of that's because everybody's got their board set differently.
Yes.
They got different grades. You're not going to find, in any draft, but especially this draft, you're definitely not going to find 32 guys with first-round grades in any building. But there are some players that are going to be much higher on one team's board than another's. I mean, Michael Penix Jr. is a perfect example where, I talked to people who had him as the number 2 quarterback. I talked to people who had him as the 7th quarterback.
Seventh.
And that's real because it's, with him, it's how he plays and it's rhythm and it's in the pocket. And if you believe in that and you got a really good offensive line, you got weapons around him, he can distribute that football. If you prefer a quarterback who's going to get out, use his legs, extend plays, that's probably not your guy. But, the gamesmanship of this entire thing, I think, is less about leaking false information or trying to get people to say things that are untrue. It's more so just trying to figure out, once you're in it, and teams are on the clock, how is this whole thing going to fall? And do I need to move up to get my guy? Am I safe to move back to get my guy? I talked to a GM a short time ago who I don't think is taking a quarterback. Possible. I don't think he's taking a quarterback. But he said, you just can't get too cute when it comes to the quarterback. Like all this discussion about, well, the Patriots could trade down and then trade back up. Maybe, but you also might cost yourself somebody here. There's a risk factor that's involved with that, especially at the quarterback position. If you think you've got a franchise type of guy, you got to make sure you get him.
So 3 in a row to start. Your best guess. Let's play best guess with Tom Pelissero, everybody.
Love it.
I would be shocked if it's not 3 in a row.
Okay.
At the top right now. Caleb Williams to Chicago, barring an act of God. Washington, nothing's 100%, but I would say certainly a high percentage chance. And the belief within the league is Jaden Daniels goes at number 2. Then that puts New England up at number 3. Certainly Drake May to New England is a strong possibility. You have other teams like the Giants and the Vikings that have an interest in moving up. But if it's not Jaden Daniels that's still there at 3, I don't think the Raiders are in the mix to move up. I don't think the Broncos are in the mix to move up. If anything, the Broncos trade down in the various scenarios that exist right now. Then the real question becomes, if it's chalk, 1, 2, 3,
yes,
those 3 quarterbacks.
Drake May being the 3rd.
Drake May be in the 3rd.
Yes.
The really interesting part becomes, where does J.J. McCarthy go? He's going to go, my belief, somewhere between 4 and 11. In other words, you could potentially have, whether it's the Vikings, whether it's the Giants, somebody saying we just have to go up and get them because you have the threat of multiple teams that are in that mix. Or if the Vikings believe the Giants aren't actually going to take J.J. McCarthy, you could sit there and wait. You could see if he just comes to you at 11. And again, there's risk factor involved in that because somebody else you're not expecting could vault up ahead of you here. This is a really rare quarterback class where you've got, depending who you talk to, 6 or 7 guys here who are legit, can be NFL starting quarterbacks. And they're going to come off the board quickly here. It then becomes, all right, at what point do some of those other guys start to get pushed up? I believe Michael Penix goes in the first round, and I think that it's at least 50-50 that Bo Nix comes off the board on Thursday night as well.
So best guess, Tom Pelissero, the inflection point, the first inflection point in this draft is where? At which pick?
Well, I think that it comes down to 4 and 5 and whether the Cardinals or the Chargers can trade down from those picks. Because we know Monty Ossenfort's open for business with Arizona.
They have 11 draft choices, though, and Marvin Harrison Jr. sitting there, and Hollywood Brown's a Kansas City Chief now. I mean,
let's say you've got those 3 receivers, though, graded pretty similarly. Because you'll find those guys in different orders on different boards.
Yes.
If you believe Marvin Harrison Jr. is above and beyond the best receiver by far in this draft, then sure, you stand in there and take him. And I'd say sitting here right now, not knowing exactly what's going to take place at 4 and 5. So that's the most likely scenario is Marvin Harrison goes to Arizona. But if you got those guys graded similarly, and let's say the Giants are willing to trade up from 6 to 4 to go get their guy, do you go, all right, we just picked up an extra high draft pick, and we're still getting one of the top wide receivers in this draft. That's the unknown part of it is different teams do it different ways. There are a lot of teams that stack their board horizontally and vertically, and part of that is to make sure that you kind of know the players you've got grouped together. In other words, if we get one of these 3, we're good. Or, hey, this guy is so far above and beyond, we can't run the risk of losing him, so we're not going to move. Again, it's the strategy of how the draft plays out, but in a lot of ways here, Monty Ossenfort is sitting on the number 1 pick in the draft, the number 1 non-quarterback pick in the draft, and there's going to be value in that if, in fact, there's somebody willing to trade up. If not, he can take anyone he wants. Marvin Harrison Jr. is certainly a pretty good bet.
Tom Pelissero of NFL Network here on the Rich Eisen Show. Best guess on how many trades occur in the top 10?
Within the top 10, it's going to come down to somebody trade up for the 4th quarterback? Or do the Patriots get blown away with an offer? To this point, they've not gotten the offer that's made them consider moving. Is there an offer out there? Is it Mike Ditka style, your next 2 drafts to move up? That'd move a lot of different people. But we know Robert Kraft said publicly they want to get a quarterback here. I would say I'd put the over-under. This is not betting advice, just to make abundantly clear here. 1.5 trades in the top 10. I don't think it's going to be completely wild, 5 trades and, Monty going up and back like he did last year, just because, there's a bunch of teams that it seems would like to trade up and make sure they get an offensive lineman. There's a whole bunch of offensive linemen, 6, 7 guys that are going to go in round 1 in this draft. You've got a bunch of teams that are interested in the corners. I'm just not sure that those guys get pushed up into the top half of round 1. And there's a whole bunch of teams that would love to trade down. The Cardinals have been open to it. The Chargers would love to trade down from 5. The Broncos at 12 would love to trade down. There's some GMs like, Seattle with John Schneider, who every year the Seahawks seem to trade down. They're sitting there at number 16. They could be a candidate to trade down as well. At the top of 2, there's a bunch of wide receiver needy teams. I would say this. I think we get more trades. There's more possibility of trades in the bottom 10 than the top 10, just because you look at the number of teams that need a wide receiver who are at the top of 2, Plus, if Bo Nix is sliding down into that bottom 10 in the first round, there could be somebody who decides to vault up and get the fifth-year option. I think you'll get a lot of action down there in the 20s would be my prediction for tomorrow night.
And I'm sorry if I'm cannibalizing any of your what's more likely's that's coming up. Have I approached? Have I broached?
That's close.
Okay. Your best guess, Tom Pelissero, more wide receivers or quarterbacks taken in the first round?
I had this conversation with a GM who told me I was out of my mind on this, but when I ran through it this morning and placed the guys where I think they're going to go, I came up with 7 wide receivers in round 1. Because you've obviously got the top 3 guys everybody's talked about with Marvin Harrison, the guy you just had sitting in this chair, Roma Dunze, who kept it warm for me, which I do appreciate here.
Especially since you're not wearing any socks.
That's right, exactly. And you got Malik Neighbors, who's also going to be a high draft pick here.
That's 3. You got the kid from Virginia.
Brian Thomas Jr., the other LSU wide receiver, who that one's got a little bit more variance. He could go in the middle of round 1. He could go at the end of round 1, but I think that in all likelihood he gets taken. You got Keon Coleman from Florida State, who's dropped out of every mock draft since he ran 4.6 at the Combine, but the fastest guy in the gauntlet drill this year. When you talk to coaches really like him. He was a basketball player at Michigan State. He hasn't filled out totally because he was training for 2 sports. So he's got room to grow. He's a big guy, and his play speed is really fast. He's one that I think everybody's going to sleep on here. I would not be surprised at all if he comes off later on in round 1. Xavier Legette, another one from South Carolina. He's the guy who did run fast. He ran like 4.39. He's a bigger guy, 1 year of production, but I think that he ends up getting vaulted into round 1. And then there's somebody else who's going to go. It's probably Xavier Worthy would be the 7th, the fastest guy and one of the cleanest prospects.
What about the other Texas wide receiver? What about Adonai Mitchell? What about him?
He's another possibility. So is Ladd McConkey. Right now, if I had to guess, I'd say they're probably into 2, but they're all that's what I'm talking about with there's going to be a run on wide receivers, let's say from like the early 20s straight through 40. How quickly do those guys go off? And once they start going, as you know, all of a sudden then everybody might panic and decide we got to trade up or we're going to run out of all these. It happened last year when there was that run of picks between Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, and somebody else went 3 picks in a row in the 20s.
Yes.
And it's because teams looked at this and they're going, well, if we don't go now, we're going to miss out. And so people get aggressive with trades.
So you're saying more receivers than quarterbacks?
I would say more receivers than quarterbacks. I think this was one of his questions.
Is it?
But I still have 6 quarterbacks.
Sorry if did I hit you? Did I hit it? Okay.
No.
I don't know.
5 or 6 quarterbacks, and I would say 6 or 7 wide receivers in round 1.
All right, Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. A best guess of a veteran player who gets traded. Happens every year, and it seems like the Eagles are always involved in one. That's 2 years in a row.
Well, Howie is in on every single deal.
DeAndre Swift last year, and obviously A.J. Brown being the blockbuster a year before.
A couple of years ago. Hollywood Brown was also traded that night in the deal that nobody even remembers because that was the second trade. It was like 7 picks later, I want to say. A.J. was, I think, pick 18, and Hollywood was pick 25. There's a bunch of receivers that are, for one reason or another, potentially available here. Brandon Ayuk is certainly on that list. We know John Lynch has said we want to keep him, have him be a 49er for life here. But look at where the wide receiver market is going. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown's deal got done today. We'll see the real numbers on that. But from a cash flow perspective, it's like a legit $28 million a year deal, which is a lot for a guy who plenty of people within the league consider to be a slot. If a Justin Jefferson deal gets done, it's going to be up in the mid-30s somewhere. It's going to be a monster deal. If you're Brandon Ayuk, arguably you're not the most important wide receiver on your team because Debo is there. It's complicated to get the numbers right. I don't anticipate the 49ers deal him for a low price. We've seen Keenan Allen got dealt for a 4th. We've seen a bunch of day 3 stuff. That would not be Ayuk. If
Diggs got sent for a 2, right? So
it was a 2, right, with another pick coming back.
Correct.
I believe Ayuk, if he gets traded, it's for at least a first-round pick. That's a high price when you also have to pay that guy near the top of the wide receiver market. But that's certainly a possibility. We know that Courtland Sutton is not overly thrilled with the situation in Denver as he goes on his 10th starting quarterback there during his time. He would like his contract adjusted. To this point, there hasn't been a lot of movement in that. Could Courtland Sutton get traded? The Broncos have said they think they're in a good place with him, but it's certainly within the realm of possibility. There's some of those types of deals. I would say the wide receiver position in general is one to watch. because some of these teams also are going to miss out on those wide receivers in round one because they're going to go so fast. Maybe there's a veteran out there that they go get.
What's the scoop with Dallas? Do you want to give a shot at Jerry Jones's press conference from yesterday? His response to Jane Slater's question in particular is one that we played on yesterday's show and has gotten some traction about being an option quarterback, and he's not yet ready to pitch it. He needs to see more. What did he say? Needs to see more leaves
fall off the trees. I enjoyed when he started when he said we're all in, all in, all in.
He said it 6 times.
And if you look at Mike McCarthy's just sitting there and then just goes the full-on like Kermit T meme. It was like, okay, yep, he's heard that all along. What are we all in with? We got we signed Eric Kendricks and saw our starting center and our starting left tackle and our starting running back.
Royce Freeman
on a minimum deal coming in, maybe a factor in the return game. They'll sign an and/or draft a running back. They're still going to be active at that spot. But if you're Dallas, you're in the need territory in this draft. You know, a lot of people have mocked Graham Barton, the Duke interior offensive lineman, to them just because they lost their starting center. They also lost their starting left tackle. You need to start there if you're going to have a chance through the course of this season here. Running back may not be the highest priority. Mike McCarthy said, love to get one of those running backs. Well, can you justify taking a running back in the second round when you've got all those other needs at premium positions around him?
Well, it would have been helpful to maybe create the cap space by re-signing your guys that are going to be only more expensive as you wait for the leaves to fall, you know, and thus hit somebody in free agency of significance.
The last deal I remember Dallas really getting done early, and this is a little different situation, was Jalen Smith. And that's going back a ways.
And maybe that's why they're a little gun shy, do you think?
Well, that did not obviously work out. And a couple of years later, he's off the team. This has been how Jerry's done business in recent years, which is you push it and you kick the can and you worry about the problems later. Dak's first deal. Now, they did make a run at it earlier, but they ended up having to tag him twice before they actually got the long-term contract done, which ended up being a shorter-term contract than Dallas always does. Why? Because Dak and his agent had the leverage in that case. Now they've got the maximum leverage in all this, which is he is going to become a free agent. He would be, because technically they had to use the second tag because they didn't sign the deal in time. They didn't paper it in time. So it will be a third tag, not a second one for Dak next year, which is 144% of his current cap number, which is like close to $90 million. So that's not happening here. He is going to be a true unfettered free agent. He's going to be the Kirk Cousins unless they're able to ramp this thing up. With CeeDee Lamb, the prices are just going to continue to get more outrageous. That's going to be $30 million plus per year. And you still got to sign Micah Parsons on top of this as well. That's what the explanation has been from the Cowboys, which is we're saving to pay the core types of players here. But Dak's as big of a core piece of the team as you can possibly imagine. And right now, looking at it, if you were guessing, and you hate to project things this far out, but it's hard to imagine that Dak Prescott's the Cowboys quarterback in 2025 if things don't change.
Really? You really believe that?
He's going to be an unfettered free agent. The Cowboys, to this point, have not made substantive strides toward getting a long-term deal done with him. He can pick any team that he can go to, and maybe Dak wants to ride things out with the Cowboys. Maybe he'll come back on whatever deal they put in front of him. But we know this about Dak at this point. He's willing to go to the wall on contract matters. He's willing to play on a franchise tag, even when he busts up his ankle. He's willing to wait for the right deal. There's certainly a possibility they could bring him back next year. But if Dak Prescott hits free agency like Kirk Cousins did this year, I would envision, nothing for sure, but I would envision that it plays out much like Cousins, which is the Vikings were willing to make an offer, but there was another team that was willing to blow that offer out of the water.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. You good with that?
No, but
So say it again. No, your mic's not on right now, but you say the Patriots?
He's saying
Patriots draft Marvin and then sign Dak in free agency. Who says no?
New England?
Dallas.
They're not going to do that. You think is there any chance?
Come on,
New
Tom.
England, he's so desperate for New England to take Marvin Harrison and not take a quarterback because he's so nervous the quarterback's not going to be the right one.
Anything is possible, but that would qualify. When you said what's the surprise, the shock going to be, that would be the biggest shock. I have not talked to anyone in the league. Again, doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. We've seen weird stuff happen before. I haven't talked to anyone in the league who believes that if the Patriots stay at number 3, they don't take a quarterback in all likelihood that would be Drake May. There's still a lot of twists to this. I mean, even Washington at number 2, you can't say with 100% certainty what it's going to be. I believe it's going to be Jaden Daniels.
Yes.
The signs point toward Jaden Daniels.
Yes.
One of those 4 quarterbacks who visited for the Topgolf trip got picked up at the airport by Dan Quinn, and the other ones took a shuttle bus to the hotel. That was Jaden Daniels. That was picked up by Dan Quinn. There's a lot of things that point toward
we didn't know that.
Jaden Daniels being the guy for Washington at number 2. If he's not, if there is a scenario where Drake May or even J.J. McCarthy goes 2, then you have chaos, because then the Raiders, specifically Antonio Pierce, are going to be pushing hard to find a way to come up to number 3. And if you're the Patriots, as much as you don't want to trade from 3 down to 13, you would have such a haul put in front of you that it would be a really interesting decision, albeit one that sitting here right now, I don't envision they're going to have to make.
Did Dan Quinn hold up a Jaden Daniels sign?
I would
How have
think-
you not asked that follow-up question? If you have that information, how do you not say, did you hold a sign up? Did you have it on an
I would
iPad?
hope. You know,
Like,
there's some anonymous head coaches in the league. Like I saw Dave Canales was telling stories today about being in the room with players having dinner with Deontay Johnson and then realizing at the end of dinner Deontay Johnson didn't know who he was the entire time. Dan Quinn, I feel like, is recognizable enough.
What? He did not know who his new head coach was?
He had no clue. I mean, you've seen Dave. Now, Dave also does not wear socks, by the way. I'm just trying to keep up with Canales here.
Okay.
No, but he's a, you know, he can blend in. I feel like Dan Quinn is a known type of thing, and immediately you hear his voice and you see him, like you probably know.
Yeah.
These guys, though, they get flown all over. I mean, there's players with 12, 15 visits. I imagine your head is absolutely spinning at some point when you're visiting all these teams trying to figure out where you are.
Thanks for the time, Tom. I'll see you later on tonight. See you all throughout the week.
Beautiful.
And
Can't wait.
You're the best. And again, because I'm with Roku for a couple days in New York next week, you'll be in the Rich Eisen Show chair for 2 days after the draft.
Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll recap all of it. See these boys, get some tacos.
Taco Tuesday. Let's go.
Bring some socks. It's going to be cold. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.